Let's just dive right in, shall we? Welcome to this high-level explainer. As a senior industry advisor, I spend a lot of my time guiding teams through massive technological transitions. And right now, well, I'm seeing almost everyone fall for a single, massive misconception about the intelligence revolution. We all kind of just assume that making AI faster and more efficient is naturally going to reduce our workloads, right? But honestly, that's a trap. The reality, and really the core paradox we're unpacking today, is that making AI more efficient doesn't reduce human work, it literally exponentially multiplies it. So, if you're wondering why your team is suddenly drowning in more work despite using the latest cutting edge AI tools, we've got you covered. Here is the roadmap for today's executive briefing. 1. The 1865 coal analogy. 2. AI's massive rebound effect. 3. The human bottleneck crisis. 4. Solving the quality trap. 5. The hidden environmental cost. And finally, 6. Managing the future workforce. Okay, let's get into it. Section 1. The 1865 coal analogy. To really wrap our heads around this 21st century intelligence revolution, we actually need to take a quick look backwards at the 19th century industrial revolution. The guy you're looking at here is the English economist William Stanley Jevons. Now, back in 1865, Britain was absolutely terrified of running out of coal. Engineers had just invented these highly efficient new steam engines, and the general consensus was, great, these efficient engines will finally help us reduce the country's coal consumption. But Jevons noticed something super counterintuitive. The more efficient those steam engines became, the more coal the country actually burned. Why? Because efficiency made mechanical power significantly cheaper. And when power got cheaper, industries suddenly found 1,000 new ways to use it. And that brings us to what's known as the Jevons Paradox. It states that when improved technological efficiency lowers the relative cost of a resource, total demand and consumption actually increase. It goes up. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why the current Silicon Valley myth is dead wrong. Driving down the cost of cognition, basically thinking tasks, won't eliminate jobs. It simply expands the boundaries of what a company can build. Think about it. If software development or content creation gets incredibly cheap, companies aren't just going to pocket those savings. They are going to demand 1,000 times more software and 1,000 times more content. Moving right along to Section 2, AI's massive rebound effect. So let's look at how this is playing out right now with what we can call the GPU illusion. This is the totally false belief that creating highly efficient AI models means we're going to buy fewer NVIDIA chips. No way. What it actually means is we will integrate AI into literally everything. Just look at this staggering number. A massive study by researchers over at MIT and Wharton looked at over 100,000 developers using AI coding agents. And they found that turning on these AI tools drove a 740% jump in coding production task velocity. 740%. That is an absolutely unbelievable surge in raw creation speed. But here's the catch. Here's where the paradox hits us. That 740% surge in raw upstream code generation, it only resulted in a roughly 20% rise in actual shipped software releases. The productivity gain didn't just vanish into thin air, it got swallowed whole by a massive downstream gridlock. Because the cost of creating the code dropped to near zero, the latent demand skyrocketed. AI generated an absolute mountain of material, but humans still had to sit there and review, test, govern, and integrate every single line. Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, the human bottleneck crisis. Seriously, what actually happens to your workers when they are hit by this AI-generated avalanche? Well, an 8-month Harvard Business Review study tracking 200 tech employees revealed the brutal reality of workload creep. AI did not reduce their work, it intensified it. Because employees could execute their tasks so much faster, they started taking on much broader ranges of tasks. They started extending their work hours, often by choice actually, because pushing the work forward just felt so much easier at first. But over time, this created a completely new baseline for speed, and that led to severe cognitive strain and highly elevated decision fatigue. Your employees aren't resting more, they are drowning in review fatigue, just constantly trying to validate the massive output their AI agents are generating. All right, Section 4, solving the quality trap. All that exhaustion we just talked about, it directly feeds into our next major challenge. Why does this flood of AI content so often result in worse overall outcomes for the business? Well, the crucial point here is that generic, unassisted AI actually drives average quality down. Why? Because generative AI is absolutely brilliant at confidently reproducing what we can call a structured hollow average. It gives you the most statistically common version of a best practice, not the actual nuanced best practice. And because those human filters we mentioned are so incredibly overwhelmed with the sheer volume of the output, they basically stop catching the nuanced errors. And so, the quality bar slowly but surely sinks. So how do we fix this? You have to move beyond treating AI as just a high-speed generation tool. The research clearly shows that when you shift AI usage from simple drafting over to diagnosis and feedback, quality actually goes up. Specific frameworks like EduPlanner and Arched demonstrate this perfectly. By actively embedding these models into structured, co-creative coaching workflows and tightly coupling the AI to specific human-defined pedagogical criteria, the AI suddenly acts as a strategic partner. It lifts the quality of the final output instead of just flooding the zone with cheap, average work. Section 5. The hidden environmental cost. Now, we really can't talk about scaling up AI without addressing the physical reality of the infrastructure required to run the whole shebang. The ecological footprint of our AI ambitions is severe. We are heavily mining rare earth metals like cobalt and lithium, and research shows that 54% of these tech-critical materials are actually drawn from indigenous or peasant lands. On top of that, supply chains, like TSMC's manufacturing process, remain deeply opaque. And as these models evolve, like DeepSeek's massive 700 billion parameter reasoning model, for example, they require significantly more inference time computation, literally pulling immense amounts of energy just to think through complex problems step by step. So all those hardware optimizations and data center efficiency gains, they're just being swallowed whole by the sheer volume of new deployments. It is literally the Jevons Paradox applied to energy. When we see policy shifts like the proposed $100 billion Project Stargate, which aims to bypass environmental assessments for hyperscale data centers, we completely decouple technical AI performance from sustainable organizational practices. And that locks in a structural emissions burden that completely outpaces any algorithmic efficiency we might invent. Finally, Section 6, Managing the Future Workforce. Let's look at how all of this builds into an actionable playbook. How do we actually manage the future workforce through this transition? McKinsey framed the future of work perfectly, saying, the shift is from executor to orchestrator. You really shouldn't fear being permanently replaced by AI, but you absolutely must prepare to manage massive fleets of AI agents instead of doing the manual work yourself. Remember, you are no longer competing against a 2019 version of your team. You are competing against rival teams who are also utilizing AI. The job is no longer doing the manual work. It's directing, validating, and applying human judgment to the machine's output. To survive this transition, you need to implement this culture checklist right now to manage those downstream human bottlenecks. First, establish clear norms for when your team should actually stop using AI. Put the tools down. Enforce deliberate decision pauses before high-impact choices to combat that cognitive fatigue. Stop measuring draft volume. Nobody cares how much was generated, and only measure actual shipped outputs. Crucially, you must deliberately redeploy the time saved by AI to prevent burnout. Treat AI efficiency as the capacity to expand your business's capabilities, not as some cheap excuse to cut your staff. So I really want to leave you with this provocative thought as we wrap up this explainer. Will you let the illusion of AI efficiency automate your team into downstream burnout? Or will you step up and orchestrate them into an elite AI-enabled fleet? The choice is entirely up to your leadership. Thank you for watching. If you got something from this, please like the video and support the channel by clicking on the subscribe button. That really helps us. Thanks again.